Hey everybody, welcome to Bacon and Coffee. Today we are going to have another great guest. Mark S.A. Smith is back with us, but before we get going, I'm going to do the live count. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bacon and Coffee. Hope you're enjoying today's National Naked Gardening Day. I was going to come to you live from my garden, but I couldn't find a fig leaf to match my chair, so I decided to stay inside. But anyways, let's get some digital caffeine happening first here. Let's kick this off. All right. We got Mr. Mark S.A. Smith. I saw you do the boom at the end. You know, it was awesome. So, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego today, sir?
Today I'm in Maryville, Tennessee, right outside the Knoxville airport, where people are still coming and going. And it's a beautiful Tennessee day right at the edge of the Smoky Mountains. I'm here to visit my mama today. So we're going to have a day at the zoo and then an early dinner. And so that's where I am today. And then off to Denver, see some kids, then off to Bryan Head, Utah for the summer. So that's where we are going next.
You're going to bring my head with you?
Yeah, well, they named it after your head, I think.
Well, it's quite a head, you know. I should have a monument in the town. It should be my face as you walk in going,
wow.
So, well, happy National Naked Gardening Day to you. You're going to be doing some naked gardening later on today with your mom?
Well, probably not with my mom, but given the fact that, we have the opportunity, I can probably find somebody that wants to nakedly garden, so why not? Give it a go.
Yeah, I'm sure there's beautiful gardens down there in Knoxville. I keep telling you, don't go back to Knoxville, but you keep telling, wait another year, but, I know it's Rockville, but we keep doing that over and over.
It's
right, funny.
REM. It is funny. It really is. Well, the National Naked Garden Day, it recalls me back to the story about Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Mm-hmm. And then they went and hid after they did that. And God says, why are you hiding? And they said, because we're naked. There it was. And God said, May 1st.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of the calendar. So the way I figure it is that probably that fruit was some kind of wine. Because I don't know, I've had some wine and I end up naked gardening after I've had a bottle or two. So
totally works for me. Hey, whatever gets you naked gardening is all good. So anyways, if you guys have any comments or any questions for Mark and I as we go along, put them in the chat. We're live on LinkedIn, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube. So check those out and there'll be replays. But anyway, so it's interesting that you bring up the story of Adam and Eve and good and evil, because today we're going to be talking about evil, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about evil, yeah.
Yes. You know
that evil backwards is live or live.
It is, yes. And did you know that Villa Park is a city in Illinois, and if you read that one backwards, it's crap alive? That's basically what it is. Sorry to all my friends in Villa Park.
You learn so much just watching this show. There's so much.
There's so much micro trivia.
Mediocrity. So much mediocrity disguising as brilliance.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. Sometimes something, you keep throwing stuff against the wall, sooner or later something will stick. But so in the good and evil today, we're going to talk about something called, I brought up the, $1 million, the Dr. Evil side of things. But it's really about people that steal $1 million, right? So we're going to be talking about pirates. That's it. Yeah. So what the heck is a pirate? What do we need to know about pirates in business?
Well, let me set this up. This is actually a part of my forthcoming book, Wise Leadership Valor, How to Make More $1 Million Deals, Kick Out the Pirates, and Completely Control Your Future. And so today we're going to talk about the pirates. Here's the setup, Brian. If there exists any opportunity to steal, and there's a possibility of being caught and prosecuted or punished is extremely low, then there's a 100% probability that somebody is stealing from you. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely true. It happens every place, every time, anywhere, and it has to do with the fact that we have a portion of our population that doesn't have integrity, and they see an opportunity to pick things up and take them their way. They'll take it. That's the pirate. A pirate is somebody who opportunistically steals and robs from easy targets. Now, every one of those words is critical, right? Opportunistic is a big part of it. Pirates don't go after the Navy ships. They go after the merchant ships, the ones that aren't armed. And they steal. Of course, stealing is the concept of taking something when nobody's observing, or rob, and that's the case of they use strong arm force to physically take something from somebody. And they easy targets. That's the whole point. And so as we talk about easy targets, part of our prevention strategy has become a hard target, so that they go off and find somebody else who's not quite as well versed in this topic, and the job is to really make yourself as hard a target as is reasonable for the value of what could be stolen.
Right. So, okay, so when we have a business, I mean, you can have a small business, a large business. Obviously, the bigger the business, the more money, the more complex the system, the easier it is to do this, right? And so, but small businesses are not necessarily immune from it.
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, small businesses are a big target for pirates because frequently they don't have the resources to pursue prosecution. Right. So remember, the combination is opportunistic, low probability of prosecution, or low opportunity of detection, and that is what creates the opportunity for a pirate. A pirate's going to go and pick up a bag of gold sitting on a table where somebody's bent over to tie their shoe just as easily as they go after a large merchant ship.
Right.
So the point really is it's opportunistic. So small businesses are probably more susceptible to piracy than big businesses, although there's plenty of pirates in the big business world. They just happen to be a little more sophisticated. And today on the show we can talk about that specifically, is the types of pirates that there are and the things that we can do to detect them, some things that you can do to eject them, and some things you can do to protect them from them. So this is the ACT show.
Yeah, because you don't want to protect them, right? You want to protect yourself.
No. Yeah, protect yourself. Yep.
Yeah,
so detect and eject.
Okay, so before we get to that, we have a quiz that we have to do that you have to pass in order to, get on my ship, my merchant ship. So number one, what is a pirate's favorite place to vacation?
Favorite vacation place? You got me.
Argentina.
Oh! Lots of pirates in Argentina, yeah.
Yeah, they love Argentina because, they can go around the Cape of, what is that, Cape Horn or something like that? Something along that line.
I think that's South Africa.
Or is it Cape of Good Hope? There's a Cape of Good Hope and Cape Horn and something like that, Hope Horn, whatever. All right, what is a pirate's favorite socks?
Oh, that one I know. They be Argyle. I'm wearing the Argyle socks today.
That's right. Why does a pirate never get married?
Ooh. I don't know, because he saw Pirates of the Caribbean. What's the answer to that one, my friend?
Because he likes to argue.
Oh, that makes all kinds of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yes. It does, yes. And the last one is pirate walks into a bar and he's got one of those ship's wheels strapped around his waist. And the bartender looks at him and says, "What's up with the wheel?" He says, "Arg, it's driving me nuts."
Oh, yes.
Okay, so enough with the pirate jokes, because I love pirate jokes. And it'd be cool if this was National Pirates Day and National Naked Gardening Day. Could you imagine gardening with a peg leg? And that's kind of the thing is, what kind of pirates are out there?
Well, the peg leg, somebody's got to make the hole for the seed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that could be very good. You just basically walk through the garden nakedly and, just basically put holes in and you can drop in your bulbs or your seeds or what have you. That's a great idea. It could make a good side business, basically pirate tilling, right? When life gives you lemons, you basically make lemonade. If life gives you a wooden leg, then become a naked gardening pirate who makes holes.
There it is, and I'm sure this is absolutely destroying our viewership right now. But then again, your other option was to watch cartoons this morning.
That's right. Yeah, this is kind of a Bugs Bunny-ish episode. So, anyways, obviously you got the peg legs, you've got the claw hand, there's the eye patch, those kind of things. That's not the kind of things we're talking about when we look at pirates, right? We're looking at different kinds of pirates. So break that down. Give us some kind of pirates that we need to be on the lookout for.
All right. Well, so the first thing we talk about, you can take a look at piracy from a couple of different angles. One is you have internal pirates and you have external pirates. So internal pirates are people that work for the company, and they can range from the CEO, the CFO, the board of directors, the owners of companies. Sometimes are pirates. They can be employees. They can. So those are the internal pirates. Then there's external pirates. People like vendors, people like hackers, so other people who are literally coming out to attack and steal intellectual property or things like that. It could be customers, or it could be competitors. And I want to dig into some of these. For larger organizations, a pirate could be a corporate raider, so somebody that is detecting an opportunity to take over the company. That indeed happens. Sometimes it's advisors that come in as pirates. So maybe the thing for us to do is break this down a little bit and take a look at these various pieces. So the internal versus external. And then the other side of that is we can take a look at, what's the level of impact, high to low. So low level impact could be shoplifting. If it's not a lot of shoplifting, it's a low level impact. High level impact would be things such as you hire a CFO, and a year later, they disappear with every penny in your bank account. It has happened way too many times. That's some serious impact. In fact, that happened to one of my friends and colleagues last year. They had a CFO that made off with $1 million. Wow.
Yes, that's crazy. And I'm sure that didn't help the business at all. And, and one of the things
it actually did help the business.
How did it help?
What happened is it woke up the leadership, and they said, we have got to do something or we're going to close. And so they redoubled their efforts, and they ended up having their strongest year ever. So they went from the disaster of having $1 million stolen from them and from COVID to their best year ever, because it just absolutely lit everybody in the company on fire.
Wow. Okay. So there was positive.
Most companies that would have bankrupted them. In fact, they seriously considered bankruptcy as part of the resolution of that. But that's not a good way of doing it.
No, and I've heard a lot of stories about things like this that, and I've got a couple of stories to add too. But I want to give you the pirate steering wheel so you can kind of guide people through the process. Yeah. So you're going to be navigating us through this choppy waters of pirates. So go ahead and dive in and start giving your spiel.
Let's start off with some of the booty that the pirate goes after. Number one is money. No, the number one thing that pirates want to go after is money.
Not Post-it notes?
Not Post-it notes. That's funny.
Thank you.
Yes, Ed. It's money. And typically what happens in small businesses, they don't have the financial controls in place, and so somebody comes in, gets signature authority on the bank account, and then cleans them out. And the way that we prevent that from happening is you have multiple bank accounts. And the ideal for a small business is 4 bank accounts. So you have one bank account that's the depository account. That's the one that you have your customers send the money into. And every day you sweep the funds out of that account into the operations account, which only you as the owner and one trusted backup has access to. And then you have the payables account that twice a month or so, if you cut checks 2 times a month, you have your CFO or your accountant come to you and say, well, here's the amount of money that we need for this 2 weeks payables, and you just put that amount of money into that payables account, and then they would have signature authority on that account. and only that account. They wouldn't have access to any the other accounts. And then the fourth account is your tax deposit account, so that you don't accidentally spend your tax deposits and get in trouble with the largest pirates, the state, local, and federal government.
Arg.
Arg. They just happen to be legal pirates, but they can disable a company just as easily as any of the other pirates. So it's really important to understand that you need to have financial controls, and you need to have limited access so that you can't have your bank account completely cleaned out. What that means is that you, as a small business owner, are going to have to do a little bit of finance to move the money around a couple times a month, but that's the price you pay to prevent somebody from going to Argentina with every penny that you happen to have.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is you have to have money controls. You have to look after your money. And my suggestion is for small to mid-market businesses, take a look at your bank account every day to detect if you've had fraud or if there's no other issues, so you can jump straight on it and potentially reverse a particular problem. So that would be one example of money theft.
And that's a great point. One of the things that I have decided in my business, I know it's a pain in the butt, but I've been doing it forever and I don't mind it, is I manage my own books. And there's multiple reasons why. Number one, yes, you can find fraud, fraud on credit cards. I'm constantly doing that. Every Saturday morning before we get on is when I do my accounting. And I make sure all of my books are balanced. And if there's any funky charges, I look at it. Like today, I got one from Google, which I thought had 0 hits on, my ads. I placed some ads that were not getting any hits, nothing. And all of a sudden a charge shows up, and it wasn't expensive, but it was, a few $100. And I looked at it and go, okay, wait a minute, I have no hits. And I went to the Google account and it was legit. And I found out I set up Google differently than I used to, where it wasn't paying for clicks, it was paying for impressions and clicks. And so, that's why, so now, that's the thing, is that sometimes you see those and not only does it help you prevent the theft, but it also helps you understand what's going on with your business. And that's the main reason why I like doing my own books, is because I can spot any kind of trend. Obviously the Google ads are meant to bring people in that are going to pay. If Google ads are constantly spending and nobody bites, something's wrong. So you got to pay attention to that. But also, you want to make sure if something is selling more and something is selling less, then you at least have a good scope of it. So even if you don't do your own books, you certainly should be getting reports on a regular basis. And those reports should be coming from an outside source, not somebody inside the company who's actually doing the books. Right?
That's exactly right. So that's one of the other ways that we can detect piracy, is with auditing.
Mm-hmm.
So your CPA should be the person that's controlling your bookkeeper, and your bookkeeper should not be working for your CPA. You have to have some separation of church and state.
Yep.
When you do these things, so there's no collusion, which does happen way more often than we like to give ourselves credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it goes back to the principle of, if the probability of getting caught and prosecuted is low and the opportunity to steal is high, there's 100% probability that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to make sure that we have that separation to reduce the probability of not being caught, increase the probability of being caught, because we have separate disinterested parties who are looking after our fiduciary best interests.
Right.
That's the play. Mm-hmm.
So what's the next thing on your list? What's the next piece of this that we need to understand?
Well, the next piece on our list is the next biggest pirate. I'm kind of working this in order of big to smaller.
Sure.
Is actually stock ownership of the company. Mm-hmm. And this has happened way too many times. One of my dear friends sold a piece of his company to a couple of people. They colluded and kicked him out of his company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He got ejected from his multi-million-dollar company because he selected the wrong partners. This has happened again with another one of my clients who I helped eject their pirate, where they brought in some private equity, and the guy came in as a business partner as well as an equity partner, and he was absolutely destructive to the business. He was ruining relationships with clients, ruining relationships with the employees, absolutely sucking the thing dry, taking a large salary out and delivering negative results. Mm-hmm. And so we had to maneuver around and get that guy kicked out. And that cost a lot of money to eject him. Not only was the equity, but the cost of buying him out and all of those elements. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one is be very, very careful who you bring in as business partners, specifically equity partners. There's a third example of where one of my clients brought in a CRO, so essentially sales,
What's
a VP of sales, Chief Revenue Officer.
Chief Revenue Officer. Okay, yeah. There's so many C levels: CSO, CTO, CIO, CFO, EIO, all of those.
That's exactly right. You know, and McDonald's farm is full of bullshit, so that's the thing we have to be careful of. I was hoping you'd spit your coffee. Oh.
And ruin all my electronics? No way, my friend.
No. I was just a spit take would have been funny. So he brought this person in, and they ended up running the revenue backwards. It actually was their worst year ever after bringing this person on. They brought him in as a minor equity partner, and it took them a lot of effort and a lot of cost to eject this bad person. And so the thing, first of all, for small businesses, do not get sucked into this concept of, hey, join the company, I'll give you a piece of the company. Don't do that. Do not do that. Stop. It's never, ever a good idea. It's a crappy idea. Don't do that. I've seen more problems with pirates because of people saying, oh, I'll give you a piece of the company. Well, it makes it hard to sell the company, and it's hard to get rid of the person if they turn out to be a good partner. So don't do that. You know, if you want to bring people in and give them performance bonuses, that's perfectly okay. That's okay, but very, very carefully think about how you split up equity. And if you bring in an equity partner, it should be a limited partner, not a general partner. So that's somebody who's going to bring in capital, but they're not going to be actively involved in the business.
Right.
That's acceptable, but do not bring somebody in who's going to be actively involved in the business unless you have experience with this person. You better have some years of experience, including some bad times, including some down business cycles with this person, or you are going to have a high probability of piracy. Don't do it. I've seen this happen way, way, way too many times. Don't do it. It's tempting. For the 15th time, do not do that.
So seriously, what are you saying? What's your point?
My point is, do not give away a piece of the company. That's not okay. That's not what we want to do.
You don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't spit in the wind. You don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you do not give away equity in your company.
That's exactly right. Do not do that.
Right.
Now that we have that clear,
I think it is. I think it's pretty clear now. Yeah.
All right. So then another aspect of this is advisors and partnership agreements and business agreements.
Okay.
One of my clients found an advisor, a business advisor, and because they had been to Burning Man, they felt they were Burning Man bros.
Yeah, right.
And he signed an advisory agreement without reading it and without sending it to an attorney.
Okay.
I don't care how much you trust a person. Do not ever sign an agreement without having an attorney look at it. Unless it's something simple like an NDA, and then you better damn well read the whole thing and hand it off to your spouse who's going to be picky uni and have them take it apart. And what happened was, in this advisory agreement, he agreed to give this guy 10% of his profits in exchange for advice. It took us a $100,000 settlement to extract from this particular advisory agreement, and it was, I could have choked my client.
Yeah,
How
because
stupid can you be?
Yeah, my advice, is don't buy pet rocks. So, there. Okay, you owe me $100,000.
Well, our viewer might be thinking, I would never do that. Well, you've done it all the time. A lot of people just they trust somebody and say, okay, I'll take care of it.
Right.
Don't. That is just absolutely
Well, and that goes even to
ludicrous.
hiring coaches and consultants and things of that nature is, no matter what you do, you need to read the contract. And
Absolutely.
that's one of the reasons, and you bring up a point that I wanted to kind of make all the way around is, and you probably are going to cover this. I've gone down the road where I had, I've been cheated, I've been pirated, and I'll give you a real life
Mm-hmm.
example of how this worked. And maybe you're going to cover this, but when I owned my
Maybe you'll
recording,
cover it.
yeah, when I owned my recording studio, I had a $500,000 business, okay? And so I was obviously hitting up there were some decent companies who were working McDonald's, Motorola, all this other stuff. And this one ad agency from Chicago comes in and says, "Hey, we're working with out of Coors, so we're doing Coors beer." And they came in, they dropped $500, they did a job, and then they paid the bill immediately. And so, okay, this is a good client, right? So then they come in and they keep going and going and going and rack up a $5,000 bill and then walk away with all the stuff and never pay anything, right? And so it was a scam. They'd go from, I found out afterwards, they were going from studio to studio to studio doing this. They would go in, basically it's the same kind of scam that they, the Nigerian prince does, or the people calling you on the phone is like, you send us $100 or we'll send you $100, you cash it and you put it in your bank account and nothing happens. And then they send you $10,000 and you put it in your bank account and all of a sudden there's nothing to pay the $10,000 and you owe it. It's that kind of scam. And so I went and actually hired a lawyer and I sued him. And we went to court and it took a year and it took me over 100 hours to put together all the evidence, the paperwork, the notes, all the stuff. And we won. I won. Okay. I won. It was $5,000. The judge gave us 50%. My lawyer handed me a bill for $2,500 and $1. In other words, it cost me $1 plus 100 hours of my time to actually sue the company. So the company got half price. I ended up getting nothing. The lawyer got rich, and I spent all that time doing nothing, And that was a lesson that I had to learn. That was piracy coming from a client, So, but the point I want to make more than anything else is that sometimes suing is just not worth it,
Well, the pirates count on that, and that's the
Right.
reason why they choose the levels, because if it was $50,000, it'd be a different story.
Right.
For $100,000, it'd be a different story. Although, and the same thing happens where they create a little bit of trust. And one of my clients had a situation where they had a fraudulent email come in from an existing client who's got a credit limit of $100,000. And they had an order come in from this particular client for just under the $100,000. It was a $97,000 order from computers. And ended up that they got it, shipped it, and then discovered that the CEO of the company said something doesn't smell right about this, called the buyer of the customer and found out they had not placed the order.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt absolutely sick because the computers had already been delivered.
Right. And at that point, there's nothing you could do about it, right?
Well, there's nothing he could do. He called the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few days later, he got this interesting call from JFK, and it was a freight dispatcher who kind of smelled something rotten and said, "Hey, I've got some computers here, came from you. I want to see if this thing's legit."
Mm-hmm.
And so it ended up happening that they were able to, this guy, because of the shipping agent, just miraculous, prayer works.
Right.
This miraculous interception. And they were able to stop the shipment before it was heading to Nigeria. And so he ended up losing about $5,000, but he could have lost $100,000
right.
in this particular case. So they intercepted and ended up shipping him back to the manufacturer and was able to make it correct. But in that whole case, if you don't have tight auditing controls, it's very easy for situations of that nature to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be very, very careful about it. Even my company, we had a pirate come in. We hired a CEO because we were growing like crazy. I was focusing on content creation. We needed somebody to lead the team.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up the guy talked a great game, but when he came to execution, he failed miserably. And he ended up creating a lot of discord, and we ended up firing him before too much occurred. But what had happened is we hired somebody that we knew as a friend, and we didn't do our full due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
This happens a lot, because if I had run any kind of background check, I would have discovered that this guy had a deep history of going from place to place to place with about a 90-day tenure.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had discovered that, we would have never hired him. We just like the guy. The guy's a con man. He's a fraud.
Right.
And so part of this is that if you hire anybody into a responsible part of your organization, you must do the due diligence and do not do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Hire somebody to do this who does it for a living. Ends up that you can do a covert background check for about $2,000. That means that we're not letting the person know we're doing it. And for about $500, you can do an overt background check. And these are done by people who used to do security clearance work for the military, and now they do it in the civilian world.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be thinking, gee, Mark, I don't know if I can really afford $500,000 or $2,000. Well, it's that or your company.
Right.
In our particular case, we probably lost about $300,000 in opportunity costs because this guy was a bungler.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get robbed specifically, but we got stolen from because of his ineptness.
Right. Well, and it's basically crushing opportunity is kind of getting stolen from too. It's like, hey, if I can't rob this ship, I'll sink it. Right. Nobody's going to get the booty.
Absolutely. Well, it actually, that's another way that a lot of pirates operate is they come in and tank the ship and then pick up the assets for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
And there are people that do that for a living.
Mm-hmm.
I am dead serious. It is absolutely disgusting and sickening, but it's what they do. And typically they come in roles such as marketing or sales, where the owner of the business or the CEO says, I don't know anything about marketing. I don't know anything about sales. And would you come in here and help me out? Yeah, I'll be glad to. Hey, sure. Check me out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take care of it. And then what happens is they come in and they run the business to the ground. There's no assets left, and then they pick it up for pennies on the dollar. I've seen that happen. And if you do the background check, you found out that this particular person had done this 4 or 5 times in a row.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the movie I Care a Lot?
I don't know. No.
Okay, so the movie.
I'm looking for some joke there.
No, there's no joke because it's okay. one of those very disturbing movies where what happens is they find retired people who don't have any family associated with them, and what they do is they go to court and they basically become wards of the state for people that don't have any family, and basically seize all their assets. They sell, so they come in. They get a court order, they do it legally, and then they sell everything. They take over all their assets, they put them in a nursing home, they drug them up, and it's done. Basically it's pirating from, rich old people who have no clue of what's going on. And not all of them have dementia or anything like that. It's a very interesting movie if you've never seen it, but it's kind of sad, but it's also, gives you an insight into, some of the mentality of how these people work, how cold and ruthless they are. You don't really think about how cold and ruthless people can be, but those people are out there, and that's not just a Hollywood movie. It happens all the time.
It does. Yes. And the people that are the coldest and most ruthless are the ones that are charming like a snake.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
And one of the ways that we can detect and protect yourself from this is if it feels too good to be true. If it smells too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
Yes.
Let your crap detector go absolutely nuts if it sounds too good to be true.
Right.
That is a critical component of that. In fact, one of our detectors is our gut. We'll get to detector systems in just a few moments. After we talk about a couple more pirates. Mm-hmm. We don't really, this is a whole section of the book that we're trying to cover in an hour.
Well, let's dig into that, because I want you to dig a little deeper. So, I know I'm kind of pulling us off on tangents, but I think it's important to realize that, a lot of times you don't even think that we see them all the time. I have a gut feeling. There are certain things that I can tell, and I've discussed this with a handful of my friends, is like, this person is rubbing me the wrong way. And then you ask a couple other people and they say, I'm getting the same sixth sense. Mm-hmm. And what you find out is they're pirating. There are companies that, want to be your buddy and ask you how things are going. And the next thing you know, they're checking out your client list and calling your clients and basically cherry picking them. You know what I mean?
That happens.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of times people do that inadvertently. If you put your customer list up on your website, you're inviting your competitors to go and pirate your customers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, dumb. Just really, really dumb stuff like that that's completely avoidable. The other thing we have to look at too is employees.
Mm-hmm.
For example, my father was an MD, ran a family practice in the Nashville area for 25 years, and his long-term office manager of 12 years began stealing from him, and she got away with $100,000 worth of money. Even though my father routinely or occasionally, he used to audit at the beginning. He would do auditing, but he stopped auditing, so she had an opportunity. And so what would happen is when she would write the payment slips for cash, she'd slip the cash in her pocket and throw away the receipt. You know, she would fudge the receipt systems. And when my father discovered this, she'd been with him for over a decade. My gosh.
For 10 years, really?
This,
wow.
Yeah, 12 years. Yeah, it was a long time. What he discovered is that she had become addicted to opioids. She was stealing drugs from the office and ended up having a fairly serious opioid addiction and was stealing cash to support a drug habit. And in this particular case, my father chose not to prosecute because, one, he knew he could not recover the money. She had no assets to go after. And second is he had a bit of compassion for her and understanding the challenge that people who have opioid addictions go through. It changes their brain.
Right.
It changes how they look at the world. And, you know, all of a sudden, their addiction is so much bigger than anything else that's happening in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a simple case that my father stopped his auditing strategy and he got taken.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, as you know, we're sharing these personal experience stories of piracy, and I'm sure that our listener has also heard the stories or been subjected to them. Yet this is not something we have typically talked about. I don't know of any book that's available talking about piracy, which is one of the reasons why I'm bringing it forth in my next book that will be out a little later on this year. So interesting, crazy stuff. And then there's also, for larger organizations, there are corporate raiders, such as Carl Icahn. Such as the Elliott Management Group. These are organizations that identify companies that have grown rapidly, usually still headed up by the founder, where the founder has reached their level of cognitive capacity and the requirements of the organization are greater than the founder has to run the organization. So they come in and identify undervalued assets because of the way the company is being operated. It's it usually comes from well-meaning company culture that has outgrown its usefulness. And then what they'll do is they'll buy a small amount of stock, and they'll buy a little bit more stock, and they'll buy a little bit more stock until they become the majority shareholder, which doesn't take much. In the world of corporations, you know, they can buy 5 or 6% of the stock, and they'll be the majority shareholder because most everybody else is less than 1% of the company. And then they'll come in and they send a letter to the CEO saying, we've taken a look at your assets and you're severely underperforming. The rest of the industry is performing here. You're performing here. So therefore, we're going to take boards in the seat and we're going to eject you.
Right.
Happened to one of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and there's a real world
organizations.
Yeah, there's a real world version of that, and that was Toys R Us. That happened to Toys R Us, where they did exactly that same thing, and they ended up shutting down the stores because the value of the real estate that they had was worth more than the toy sales in the company. So basically what they did is they bought the company, they shut down the stores, sold the real estate, made money, and left it alone.
That's what corporate, those are pirates. 100%. And then, of course, there's other pirates that you and I run across as intellectual property producers.
Oh, yeah.
Where people take what we've done, represent it as their own, and try to make money from it. And I know that happens to you all the time.
It does, yes. I've been I'm on episode 670 on my podcast. The podcast is kind of hard to steal, you know. And
that's hard to steal.
Yeah, it's very hard to steal. But I have a blog that is actually made from the podcast. So it goes on my B2B site, and then it's put up on another site. It's actually aggregated, and I do that on purpose because it gets to a bigger audience called business to community. Business to community then is being pirated by at least 50 different companies. And what they're doing, at least in business community, you're registered as an author. So it comes up and says, this is by Brian Basilico, B2B Interactive Marketing. What happens is these other companies take that from business to community, put it on their own website as if it's their own, actually erase your name and put their name at the bottom as the byline. And so they're taking your content and plugging it in there. Have you seen that? I mean, is there any other examples similar to that you have?
It happens to me all the time, too. But you have an interesting solution to this.
I do.
I really like, and I will be quoting you in the book.
Please, I would love to be quoted in the book. So the one thing that I decided, because I actually went down the road of trying to chase these down, it's like playing whack-a-mole, It's like you can't find everybody who does it, because it does ping inside of the WordPress system. It says, hey, here's a ping back, and you go to the ping back, and all of a sudden you're seeing all these people that are stealing your stuff, because one way, shape, or form it's linking back. But the way you fix the problem is I go in and make sure that I add links inside of the text back to additional articles, back to additional resources. And that way, when they copy it from the other company, from business to community, they're copying it verbatim. So if anybody clicks any of the links inside of that article that they're taking credit for, ends up back at my website, which drives more traffic to me. So now I've got 50 people out there who are basically stealing my content, driving traffic to my website. As opposed to me trying to go chase them down and try to tell them to shut it down, or trying to sue them and get a cease and desist letter. And basically it's whack-a-mole, because if you shut down 50, there's another 50 that are going to pop up and say, hey, I can use other people's content and not have to worry about this. It's called content curation. It's totally cool. Not without attribution. It's not. That's stealing.
That's right. I love that idea here. What we're doing is taking piracy that is unpreventable, right, and again unenforceable. It takes us back to the original principle. If it's easy to steal and the prosecution is low, then they're going to steal. 100% probability of stealing. In this particular case, the strategy is how can we make money from the pirates' laziness, because pirates are lazy.
Right, exactly.
That's part of their characteristic. They're the hardest working lazy people I've ever seen.
Yes, and yeah, the thing is if they can't, it becomes a pain in the butt, they'll move on to another one. That's the biggest thing about them, is they look for easy because it's easy, and then when it crashes, then they move on to something else, right?
Right, exactly. Well, another source of piracy are employees.
I do, please.
Yeah, as employees, we talked about my father's example with his office manager. But if you're in the world of food service, prime ribs walk out the back door all the time, and because of the slim margins that you're working against, it takes a lot of selling to recover those losses, those thefts. Mm-hmm. And so that's the kind of thing you have to have an eyeball for as well. Another example that I knew of is. A friend went in to do an audit of a bar, and the owner, for whatever personal reasons, didn't like working on the weekends. They liked during the work weeks, didn't like working on the weekends. So he sent one of his friends in to audit because he knew his employees were stealing from him. Mm-hmm. And he came back and said, yeah, I watched all night long, and they were ringing up the drinks and putting it into all 3 of the registers. And the guy said, 3 registers? I only have 1 register.
Wow.
These pirates were bringing in duplicate cash registers, plugging them in, and then taking the registers home at the end of the evening.
Wow. That's interesting. And obviously nobody at the bar knew it, but...
Nobody in the bar knew it. Nobody knew what was going on. There's an example of a lazy owner who was absolutely being ripped off as hard as they could be. It's crazy the kind of theft that can go on. Let's talk a little bit about prevention.
Okay, please do.
I think we've covered enough piracy for right now. There's more, but we've covered the main. Let me talk about one more.
Sure.
Vendors. Vendors can be pirates.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens in a number of ways, such as short shipments, or I was just talking to a gentleman whose business is to help banks recover inappropriate fees or underpaid fees from credit cards. So in the case of banks, they get a piece of the action because they're part of the network. Mm-hmm. But what happens is they, in their contracts, it says that the bank is responsible for auditing the payment from the credit card merchant, and that they can't go back any later than they have 30 days to do the audit. So this guy goes in and does the audit to find out what's going on. And in every case, he has discovered that banks are being underpaid by the credit card companies for their participation. For small banks, it might be $30,000, $40,000 a month, which is a lot of money for a small bank. For larger banks, it can be millions of dollars a month. In this particular case, the vendors are intentionally short paying, and within the agreement, essentially putting the responsibility on the bank to do the auditing, and then making a very short time frame in which they can be caught. So this is essentially corporate piracy in this particular case. So if you have any situation like this, you need to be reading your contracts, and you need to be doing the auditing, because it's worth it. It's heartbreaking how many people at what levels are stealing from businesses.
And again, this is the point, have people read things over, understand, get a lawyer involved, get people to understand what they're getting into. And, and again, the more complex the big business, the bigger the deal, the more crazy it is. And, to the point that you're talking about with vendors, one of my clients is, and I respect this very, very much, is, I sent them an invoice and I outlined everything that we did. And they said, well, we have no way of tracking that. So they made me put together a spreadsheet that actually lays out every activity and puts it down by hours and whatever. And then every invoice that I send, has to correlate to those, so you can actually track the invoice number and the line item to this spreadsheet every single month. And that way, if there's anything that's duplicated, and I make mistakes. Everybody does. It's like you build something last month and you forgot about it, and you build it again this month. They'll come back and say, hey, you built this twice. It's like, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. Honest mistake. It wasn't intentional. But that to me, that was, I respect what they did. It's a little bit more work for me, but they pay me for the time, so it's a win-win for them. So they don't have to go through and do this like detailed audit every single month. And so I think that's a really great way to do it is, make your vendors actually do it for you, so that you can actually go back and track it. You need to have some kind of system to be able to make sure that they're not, like you say, short shipping or double dipping or all those kind of things, right?
Yeah. And so what you've done is discussed really the first level of detection, which is audit. You have to have a third pair of eyes, look things over,
right,
to make sure that people are doing the right thing, either intentionally or unintentionally. We want to make sure that we capture that, because what we examine tends to be a whole lot better than things that we don't examine. It goes back to the original principle. If the probability of caught is low, well, anything that's unaudited is going to open the opportunity for some piracy. The second way that you can detect this is fires. If you have an individual or two that is routinely creating chaos, look very carefully. They may be doing things intentionally to sabotage the organization. This is usually the way that we find things such as the chief revenue officer who was underperforming. There was lots and lots of fires with the sales team. And so this person was creating the chaos, and we had to kick her out because of that, because she was tanking the company.
Right. And it's deflection. It's saying, this is happening over here. Go look at that. Go look at this. Go look at this. It's like, you need to pay attention to this. And in the meantime, they've got you distracted so they can do other things, right? It's the sleight of hand. It's a technique.
That's exactly right. It's a magician's trick. So consistent fires from one group or one individual is a prime indicator that we have a pirate. The next one is your gut check. If you feel something isn't right, trust that intuition.
Right.
We as humans, we have this bundle of neurons called mirror neurons that literally can detect what's going on in a section of another person's brain. We have them at birth. It's how humans develop. It's when you smile at a child, they respond with a smile. Why do they know how to smile? It's the mirror neurons that are firing in response to their parents' mirror neurons. And we still have these mirror neurons. It's part of our detection system. So if you're positive and you're detecting somebody's mirror neurons are being negative, you will feel that in your gut. And that's where it tends to show up, is in that gut. So the gut check is absolutely critical. There is a neurological quantum level connection that, if you pay attention to it, will give you all kinds of indication.
Right.
Lots and lots of interesting signals.
And the worst thing you can do at that point is start pointing fingers, right? You don't want to make them alert to the fact that something doesn't feel good. You want to go behind the scenes and kind of dig a little bit and figure out, am I right? Does it make sense? Because sometimes you could be just wrong, because that's the other thing too. Think about what's happening in the world today, with masks and the way we're communicating through Zoom. It's not quite the same as it was in person.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
You have to pay attention to those kind of things. So my thing is that, you get that gut feeling, but, before you start bringing it to the table, do a little bit of research and see if you're starting to detect some inklings of stuff going awry, right?
Well, the trigger is pay close attention.
Right.
Do not override this intuitive hit. And in every situation where I have worked with my client to pull a pirate out of the organization, they said, I knew something was wrong, but I ignored it. So use that as your trigger to take a closer look. And one of the ways that you can take a closer look, one of the ways to take a closer look is to bring in a third party to ask the right questions, do the audit, and what that does is protects you in the case that something is not quite the way you thought it would be. But I guarantee, in my experience, it's 100% accurate. Doesn't mean we go pointing fingers until we round up the evidence.
Right, exactly.
But there is, trust your intuition. In reality, it has never, ever let you down, although you may have talked yourself out of the fact it did, but it never has.
Right.
This is something that good leaders, well, they call it their gut instinct. It's actually, they realize that they're tapping into that warning signal that we get from our brains. One of the best ways to prevent pirates, as well as detect them and kick them out, is key performance indicators. Where you have a clear key performance indicator that is responsible and accountable for the person you're trying to measure. So they have full control over the key performance indicator. And if they miss the first time, then you have the opportunity of digging in to understand why they've missed. And if they miss the second time, you have the opportunity of putting them on notice. And if they miss the third time, you have the opportunity of kicking them out of the company because of performance issues. And so this is one of the methodologies that we can use to eject pirates. And, depending on who's in the organization, sometimes we have to bring in legal, sometimes, or we always bring in HR, but sometimes we have to bring in a legal advisor, especially if there's an issue with a contract. Unfortunately, lawyers usually get involved when we kick out pirates. I hate to say it, but probably in my experience, 70% of the time, we've had to bring in some legal bills to get this person out of here without leaving a nasty trace.
Right. Yeah.
And interestingly, in most of the cases, part of the pirate settlement was asking for a gag order. Don't agree to it.
Really?
Well, sure. Why, do you want somebody else to be hit by this pirate because you can't talk about their piracy?
Gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense. So I was thinking the other way. So, a gag order on
the You want to gag them, but you don't want to gag you.
Right. Yeah, because the last thing you want is when you fire somebody is for them to go out. And I've seen this happen in small businesses all the time. You get somebody in there who is pirating and doing things nasty. And, I've had customers that have, worked their bill through and not paid me. And I've learned, how to deal with that better. Basically, well, won't get into the details on that. But when somebody leaves, then the first thing they do is go on all the social media channels and just start bad mouthing and that this company sucks and yada, 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 yada. And you got to protect yourself. So if you're going to have to separate yourself from somebody, you got to make sure you're protecting your reputation at the same time, right?
Yeah, you got to have some gag orders there, at least as the separation agreement. And you can do that. Your attorney can draft up a simple, final agreement in exchange for their final check. and a lot of times they'll sign it so they get their hands on the check.
Mm-hmm.
And in that check needs to be a gag order on their end that they're not going to discuss any aspect of this or the business in any negative sense, any type of situation, public or private. But yeah, that's an important component of the kick out. All right, let's take our last moment here and talk about prevention.
Sure.
What can we do to prevent? That was some detection. So number one, prevention strategy is trust and verify. You trust people, but you better damn well have verification in place that person cannot subvert.
Right. Yep, totally makes sense.
Whether it's a key performance indicator or some sort of log or some sort of auditing strategy, that is critical. And along those same lines, making people take vacations is a critical component of piracy detection. You send them on a 2-week vacation and their scheme falls apart. And in a lot of financial institutions, this is part of their culture. You must take a 2-week vacation where you are not allowed to have contact with the organization for a couple of weeks, in which case things tend to unravel and they can detect them. That's another strategy that you can potentially use. We've talked about signature authority, being very careful about what you allow people to have access to, specifically in the world of money or other valuable assets. Making sure that you have firewalls in place. So firewalls is another strategy, so that you separate out the person who has the receivables is not the same person that makes the payables. Which was the issue in my father's office, because the receivables and payables was done by the same person. That's where they stole, was that gap between.
Sure.
Background checks, we've talked about that. Anytime you bring a key person in, you got to pay for a background check.
Sure.
Don't skip this step. It's as important as anything else you do, and I guarantee you that if you have had to kick somebody out, it's because you didn't do a background check and you were the person that did the interview, and you didn't have a third party interview them and detect that there was an issue. Third-party people who are not emotionally attached to the outcome maybe have a better gut detector than you do in that moment, because you're desperate to fill the role.
Right. Well, and the biggest thing is schmoozers smooze. They can smooze you because they're going to tell you what you want to hear. When you get a third party involved, they have no skin in the game, so to speak. So it's kind of really hard to schmooze somebody who doesn't have any, outcome. That's
exactly right. It's one of the reasons why my clients ask me to interview people as part of their process, is because I am unimpressed.
Yeah. Good for you.
And I can be part of, I can do the check. Is this person, how does this person handle conflict?
Right.
Because that's one of the things we have to check for. How do they handle conflict? Are they coachable? Or are they impermeable to input? A lot of times my clients will choose to have me interview them to be the hard ass. And I can play that role. I'm a sweet guy, but I can play the role of a hard ass for my client because it keeps them clean, right?
Right.
Hey, I want you to talk to this third-party advisor. I want to see what but I got to tell you, the guy's a bit of a hard ass, but, I want you to talk to him. Okay.
Right. Well,
so
it's good cop, bad cop.
It is good cop, bad cop. And then my client stays clean. There's nobody in their organization that gets sticky, and quite frankly, I don't care.
Right. So we got about 3 minutes left. What else do we need to cover before we get to the how to contact Mark?
I think that there's 2 others that I want to talk about, and that is culture. Probably one of the best ways to help eliminate the pirates is has a very clear culture statement, especially one that discusses integrity, so that if there is any out of integrity activity, you can get the person out of there very quickly because it's a stated cultural aspect that they have violated. The next one is clear business rules. Absolutely clear business rules. Pirates take advantage of the gray space or the fuzzy space in business rules. So if you have a system that's absolutely tight, then it's a whole lot harder for pirates to get in. I've got a whole list of more of them, but you get the point. There's ways to make sure that this does not happen.
Right.
And my final comment here is I had a conversation with one of my colleagues who turned around 37 companies in his life. That was his career. He was a turnaround specialist. But he actually did it. He actually he kept the CEO, but he came in and directed the CEO. So he was essentially a CEO whisperer. In all 37 companies, there was a pirate in every one of them. And in 75% of the companies, the reason why it existed is because they had insufficient financial controls.
Huh. Interesting. So the bottom line is get outside people, pay attention, spend some money to save some money, because we tend to be penny wise and pound foolish, that kind of thing. And so, I think that's kind of the key. The key message here is, number one, piracy happens. Be on the lookout for it, know how to act for it, and always ask for help. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Always ask for help.
Yeah, in every one of these cases for my clients, they were sheepish about asking me for help, and yet I spotted the pirate first. I was the one that said, I'm not feeling good about this person. And then they said, oh, no, they're great. No, they're trustworthy. No, we checked them out. No. Yep. And then they would come back and said, Mark, you're right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you can see things. So speaking of seeing things, I'm sure people are going to want to see more of you. And so what is the best way?
Naked Gardening Day.
It is Naked Gardening Day. Exactly, yeah. So we want, well, maybe we don't want pictures. So if people want to get a hold of you, I'm assuming the best way to do it, because I know you have, your company name is Bijaco. And so that's one way to do it. Just check out Bijaco. And then this is the other way that you like to get connected to, right?
Yeah, I like, if we're going to connect, let's connect on LinkedIn, so we at least have a way of staying connected over time. And if we exchange email addresses, those are likely to change over time. But if we connect on LinkedIn, that usually is a great way of doing it. And the way that you go directly to my LinkedIn profile is marksonlinkedin.com. In the introductory, just say, hey, I saw you in the Bacon and Coffee show. I'd love to connect. And then we'll connect, and then we can set up a time to have a conversation. I'll be glad to have a 20-minute conversation with anybody who's listening to the show, just to find out who you are and what cool things are going on.
Yeah, and you definitely want to talk to Mark, because, I mean, this is just one piece of a very complex puzzle. I mean, man, I've had you on so many topics, and you've taught me so many things. You've taught me how to eat a whale. You taught me, how to... Yes, exactly. And how to avoid getting my clients fired and all that kind of fun stuff. You have so much great information, and it's always a pleasure having you on, man. So thanks again for sharing your stuff. This is awesome. It's always fun. And you're on every single month on the first Saturday of the month, no matter what it is. And we always find another topic to talk about. We love you guys. Thanks for showing up both live and watching the replays. And with that being said, Mark, I'm going to jingle us out with the Bacon and Coffee jingle and say sayonara for another Saturday Bacon with Coffee. Thank you, everybody.
Happy
Talk
trails.
soon. Woo-hoo! Happy gardening.